Hello and welcome. I am Mara Cepeda. This is Rappler Talk. We have here today former Commission on Education Chairperson Patricia Licuanan, who last week had resigned from the cabinet of President Rodrigo Duterte. Hello, ma'am. Welcome to Rappler.
Thank you, Mara. Nice to be here.
Okay, let's dive right into the questions.
Sure.
You resigned from your position last week after receiving a phone call from Executive Secretary Salvador Medialdea. How did the phone call go, and what exactly did he tell you?
Well, initially I received a text asking if he could call me, so I called him back, and he informed me that some awkwardness, I believe. He informed me that they were in Davao and that there were people reporting to the president about some things against me, and therefore he was instructed to ask me to resign. It's very simple, and I think the ES is a man of a few words, so that was it. And I initially, of course, protested. I tried to say that, but those accusations are all false. In fact, I've already proven them false, so I don't see why I should resign. Then he went on to say that there will be things will get worse. There will be more. That there was going to be a privileged speech and possibly an investigation in Congress on me. And so, again, saying it would be better all around if I resigned. So I started out trying to justify and really reacting to the falseness of the accusations. But then it became clear that actually what it was is they really wanted me to resign, and that things would really be quite difficult in the sense that I would be spending so much of my time, which should be more productively spent, fending off these false accusations. So I said, yes, okay, I will seriously think about it. But I did say two things. I said, I'd resign tomorrow. So I said, no, sorry, I'd resign tomorrow, but I have two objections to the way it is being done. First of all, I said, the president just said that he's about to dismiss someone at the head of an agency for corruption. And then that morning, actually, the head of PCSO resigned, and Secretary Roque said, no, that's not the one the president meant. So I said, obviously, it was me, and I cannot accept the corruption accusation. And secondly, I said, I know there are people who want me out. Why are you believing them? Why don't you give me a chance to prove them wrong? So that was one message I gave. And the other one was also, it's only 6 more months. Why can't they wait 6 months? And that's when he said, now it's this accusation, then it will be something else, and then they will investigate you. I even said, that doesn't bother me because I'm a veteran of 8 budget seasons, and I know what it's like to be treated badly in Congress. So, but then after a while, as I said, it was clear that it was not a matter of whether the accusations were true or not. So that's when I decided I better go.
Were you given a chance to speak to the president himself to at least explain your side? Or?
No, I don't think that was in the agenda at all. I did ask, though, when I said, yes, please assure the president I am going to resign. But could I deliver my letter of resignation in person? Then he said, no, the president is in Davao. He might not be back till Tuesday. I can't guarantee that you'll be able to get in right away. So you better just send in your resignation first. Then I said, yes, that's fine. But even after I resign, I would like to talk to him. So he said, well, he'll try to arrange it. That hasn't happened.
Not yet. Do you expect to be able to talk to the president, or do you feel like it's a lost cause?
I don't think he would be particularly inclined But it would be nice if eventually I get a chance to talk to him, but maybe that may not be, that may not come very soon.
Your term was supposed to end in
July.
July 2018, and earlier you mentioned that you were talking to the ES saying that, why can't you just wait for 6 more months? But even then, I think as early as December 2016, they already sent a general memo asking all appointees of
Right.
President Aquino to resign. You were appointed again in 2014. Why didn't you resign at the time, knowing that the president didn't want Aquino appointees to stay in government?
At that time, it was very important that I defend the principle of a fixed term. So it's very clear because the drafters of the CHED law made it put that in, that they would have a fixed term with a maximum of two terms of 4 years each. And they did that because they didn't want the CHED, they didn't want higher education to be politicized. So I thought there was a good reason for that. And besides, it's the law. So I fought to preserve that. But at this stage now, it was less the term. It was really they wanted me out, and I felt with resignation, the principle of fixed term is still preserved, because I resigned and he accepted my resignation. If he had fired me, which sometimes he says he had, it would mean it would have to be for cause. And I suspect that's what they were looking for. That's why they went from excessive travel to unauthorized travel to the scholarships. It was a fishing expedition of sorts, and because they wanted to find cause.
Okay.
But with cause, you have to have due process, and that didn't happen either.
Okay. Now let's discuss the corruption allegations and the people you think were behind them. Let's go first into the allegations thrown at you, because you were at the headlines weeks prior your resignation over particularly 2 issues, the ones that you mentioned. Congressman Jericho Nograles
Nograles,
accused you of first not securing permits from the Office of the President to go on your 8 trips in 2017.
Right.
Okay. And you were able to disprove his claim as you were able to
Exactly.
produce
The documents, yes, exactly.
But Malacanang also said that it doesn't mean that the Office of the President signed your travel authorities, that it's already something that the President already agrees with. Parang it's an
Well, that's a
administrative.
fault of their system, because how else? That's what we are supposed to do, and we do. We go through the whole process. We wait. Actually, last Christmas, I really was on pins and needles because even personal travel has to go through Malacanang, and so we were planning a family trip between Christmas and New Year, and it was the last working day before the Christmas break,
Yes.
and it was 5 o'clock, and I hadn't received my travel authority yet. So it's very clear that is very important, and we follow it to the letter. And I was really thinking, God, if it doesn't come, that's it. I don't take my trip. My poor family, my poor grandson won't get to go. No?
Were you able to go on
Yes,
this trip?
yes. Finally, it came at 6 o'clock.
Is this trip part of the 8 trips that
No.
you listed?
So I took 11 trips.
Okay.
8 were official, and of those 8 official trips, only 5 were paid for by government. The other 3 were paid for by the sponsor. I took 3 personal trips. I think it was Holy Week, all of those long weekends, no? Holy Week, the November 1st weekend, and then the Christmas break.
How necessary were these 8 official trips that you took in 2017? How exactly did it return to the education community here in the Philippines?
I think any discussion of travel in CHED has to be understood in the context of the global trend towards internationalization in higher education. Internationalization is a policy of CHED. It is a strategy that we have agreed upon, no? Because basically it would mean benefits to the country, because internationalization means exchange in terms of students, faculty, researchers, programs, joint degrees. And what it does is well, it certainly is a strategy to enhance the quality of Philippine education, but it also establishes or protects the reputation that the Philippines has enjoyed as also a center for higher education, at least in certain niche areas. So it's a good thing. No? It's something that it's part of our job. No? So a lot of these travels are very specific. So one was to Paris, and that was really because it was a continuation of something that was started when the president of France, Francois Hollande, was in the Philippines. He had brought a whole batch of rectors of French universities and colleges, and that started kind of the ball rolling, their relationship with Philippine higher education institutions, and so we've had meetings, and in that particular trip, I took a number of higher education presidents with me. So at any rate, the point here is it's necessary. It's not a frivolous thing, and we have a very definite process for evaluating invitations, and we have to determine that these are part of national commitments, that they are definitely in line with higher education, with our work, and that nobody else, like that the embassy, let's say in the post over there, could handle it. No, so we're quite strict with ourselves.
What kind of scholarships did the Philippines get out of your trips last year?
I don't know. I cannot give very specific ones, but for instance, I know that for the Paris, for the France, some of the institutions which had relationships with Philippine institutions do grant tuition scholarships, and then CHED grants, let's say, the travel part of it. No? So there are arrangements like that. For instance, I went to Hungary. That was my last trip, and they're very, very keen on getting Filipinos over there, and they have 35 scholarships that they give, and they are disappointed because, just a fraction of those have actually materialized. So that was our promise, that we would try to promote it a little bit more aggressively. So we met the students, the Filipinos who were there, and we said, tell us, what makes this special? What would you say to others, to entice them to study in Hungary? Because Hungary is not your usual choice. No, they'd want to go to the UK, they'd want to go to other better known destinations. And so as a result of that, we had some ideas on how we could market it a little better. But there are 35 scholarships that are there waiting for Filipinos. No?
Let's go back to Congressman Nograles. Now, when you were able to show, and you sent it to the media, copies of your travel authorities from Malacanang, he didn't drop the ball. He said, even then, your trips meant that you were absent for 41 days, that you spent 893,102 pesos in government funds to fund your trips, and that you had also booked business class. And so, where did the 893,000 go? Where did you spend it during the trips?
There's no free lunch. Of course, you spend it for airline tickets. You spend it for hotel accommodations. Basically that. And 8 is really not an awful lot of trips when you I'm sure if they go through the roster of people in my position, they would find out that it's not excessive by any means. No? So maybe the issue would be with, so in other words, yes, you have to pay for travel as long as it is worth it. No? So from our point of view, with our due diligence, yes, it is worth it. They were not frivolous trips.
Okay.
Now the question would be, why did I travel business class?
Yes.
No? That's right. Well, essentially, again, we were very conscientious about that. There is a presidential order which allows people at a certain level to travel business class if it is a long haul trip, no? Over a certain number of hours. And so even as I apply for my travel authority, part of that application is a request for business class,
And
which
they
is
allowed
also,
you?
of course.
Even if-
otherwise, if they had not, I would not have gone business class.
But the president had also announced that he wanted public officials to refrain or to not use the business class at all, to take commercial planes, and he takes commercial planes.
Of course. You
himself.
think I have my own?
Opo.
I
So
see.
why still?
No, but I wonder, they started out very strong that way, but I really do not believe that they do not travel business class. No? So, I mean, and I would not begrudge them that. I think the president of the Philippines should travel business class, and I think he does, or they rent the whole plane. No? So, and that's the same thing. So essentially, in this case, and it's very clear that it's a work trip. It's a long haul, and when you, as usual, because I don't want to be out too much, I really leave when it's just to give me enough
Yes.
time to travel. So I kind of hit the ground running. I arrive in the morning and there's already a meeting. So you should really be rested.
And they're very quick trips, maybe around.
Yes, 3 days, 4 days,
Yes,
and I'm
compared
back.
to other officials
Exactly,
whose public functions are just 3 days and they extend a little bit more, probably to go sightseeing.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to another congressman who were throwing allegations at you, Iligan Representative Frederick Shao, who claims that there are still 9,500 CHED scholars who still do not have their living allowances. And he issued a statement, first issued a statement and was set to deliver a privileged speech and file a resolution to probe the delay of these allowances. He seems to be insinuating that they're delayed because the money went somewhere else, maybe your pocket, and so
or maybe my trips,
or maybe your trips. So why are these allowances delayed? And did it return to you? Did you use it for your own benefit?
Absolutely not. Well, okay, let's just get things straight. Now, first of all, those numbers are a little bit off. First of all, certainly the 9,000 refers to all the. Let me start, Mara, on what the K to 12 transition
Okay, go
program
ahead.
is,
Of
because
course.
if it's important, then it's worth certain birth pains.
Yes.
No? So, of course, you know that the K to 12 program, which added senior high school to our basic education cycle, was arguably the most major education reform of the in the past decades. And so we were all supportive of it, but it had one possible negative repercussion, and that was during the period where there would be no intake of freshmen because they would be in senior high school. What would the higher education institutions do with their teachers?
Yes.
No? So for the private institutions, this was quite serious. They would have much less tuition income, and therefore teachers may have to be displaced. So that was our fear. No? There were threats of displacement of teachers. So we said, let's do something. Let's take this opportunity, because the teachers will have the time now, because they're not burdened with too much teaching. They can do things that they should have done long ago, such as complete their graduate degrees, get their masters and their PhDs, because only 50% of our higher education faculty have graduate degrees, which is not good at all. No? So they could be studying, they could be doing research, they could be doing extension work, they could be doing immersion in industry, all of these things which are very valuable to upgrade Philippine higher education. So that was the idea.
Mhm.
No? So we asked for a budget precisely to be able to do this. And that's why we were able to grant almost about 9,000 scholarships of various forms. No? But it is not all of them that had problems. This started in 2016. But first of all, let me just say that we get our money, our budget is approved close to December, and then we get the funds in January.
Yes.
And so we had to rush quickly to put the logistics of that plan together before March and April, when the possible displacement might take place. So that had to be done quickly. Now, so the 2016 batch were the ones that had some problems
How
because
come?
birth pains. We just the logistics were a little bit too much for us, no? Essentially, by 2017 we had ironed out some of the kinks, and so the 2017 scholars were not the problem. It was the 2016. So that was about 4,000 or so, not 9,000
Okay,
as
so
originally.
just about half.
Yeah,
Okay.
just about half.
And what were the reasons? You mentioned that it's birthing pains
Yes.
in logistics. You issued a written statement before. You mentioned about the problem in the system of
Yeah.
CHED. Wala po bang budget to upgrade the IT, since you already noticed my problem?
No, it was not. I don't think it was an IT issue. First of all, let me just say, when you give out scholarships of any kind, you need documents from your applicants. No? So part of the slowness was the lack of documents or discrepancies in the documents
From the students themselves?
from the faculty scholars.
Faculty
no?
scholars.
Yes. And secondly, of course, I had mentioned now that since it was so voluminous, it was a challenge to the carrying capacity of CHED. We hired contractuals to help us, but ultimately, all of the final approval had to pass through a very limited number of what they call plantillad personnel. Contractuals could not have the authority to approve those things. So that slowed things down.
Okay.
And then the third reason was the usual auditing rules, no? And we have to follow these rules very carefully.
What in particular?
Let me give you one example. COA is very particular about making sure that all the documents are in, so when the 2016 scholars first submitted their documents, COA discovered that there was no document that showed that the faculty had been deloaded, had been given a less teaching load. And so they said, where's the certification of deloading? And we said, we never asked for that. Then he said, then how do you know that they are deloaded? The school will take responsibility for that. No, they wanted it. So we had to, again, go back to all of the scholars and require that additional document. So it makes sense from the point of view of COA to have a document that shows that. But on the other hand, we felt, in hindsight, maybe we should just have pleaded that for this batch we'll go ahead, but for the next batch we will require it, rather than slow things down in such a major way. So Mara, it's true, things are slow, but in fact they're slow because we are so careful about the money, that we follow all the rules. So no, it has been, the money is all there, it's in the bank. TBP has been informed about and we have speeded things up a bit, and so now we are releasing at least half of those 4,000 have gotten their full allowances. Some of them with incomplete documents, are given partial, and that's already kind of taking a chance. But we
Yes.
said it's okay because then they won't get their full allowance until they give all the documentation. So I think that's a safe risk. But those without documentation, at least as of this moment, and
How
there are
many
a
are
few,
they? Yes.
it seems that there are 641 who are being processed.
This is as of what date, Dr. Licuanan?
It says
Or
here
before you
January
left?
22.
Ah, yes,
huh?
okay.
So those with full allowance are 2,269.
Mm-hmm.
Partial allowance 581. So that's total of 208,000,
2,800.
2,850. And those that haven't gotten anything yet, there are about 1,200. Half of those,
1,200.
1,200, well, actually 1,241.
Mm-hmm.
Again, half of those are being processed because they have submitted their documents, and others still with no documents, 605.
Okay, and so you're saying it's only fair and
It's
it's only
moving.
necessary for CHED to have these documents first, and the reason why
Yeah.
there were delays, there were incomplete or discrepancies in the documents.
Right.
And
So what we're trying to do here is, of course, help the scholars, the applicants, fulfill the documentary requirements. We are asking the schools also to please help us out. We have assigned a kind of a liaison who is part of the school, who will be just in charge of all the scholars in that particular school, and who will do some of the maybe mediating between the administrators who need to produce things and the poor scholars.
Okay. Now let's go to the people who are making these allegations against you. Well, we talked about the two congressmen also, but you also mentioned in your resignation speech that, and I quote you, "It has become obvious that there are persons determined to get me out of CHED by hurling false and baseless accusations against me in what appears to be a fishing expedition and a well-orchestrated move in media." Who are these people that are you referring to? Are these the representatives who made the public accusations against you?
I think, it's a combination of several groups. Yeah, we've already talked about the congressmen. And I think from the point of view of the congressmen, I'm just speculating, of course, but maybe they'd like to please the president. So, let us provide you data so you can get rid of this person whom you didn't want it, in your government anyway. But yes, there are elements within CHED who have wanted me out, and in fact, last year about this time, the same thing was going on.
Yes.
When I guess that was when the president had
Issued an
disinvited me from the
from the
attending cabinet meetings.
Yes, and I understand around this time, then CHED Executive Director Julito
Yeah.
Vitriolo wrote a letter to the President
Exactly.
asking him to appoint as OIC Commissioner Popoy de Vera to
Right.
replace you, but the President didn't act on it. So
No.
by elements in CHED, are you referring to the CHED
Yes,
commissioners?
absolutely. I'm talking about Attorney Vitriolo,
Okay.
basically, because that's public knowledge. Right?
Why does he have an axe to grind against you?
I believe it is because, well, essentially, I have from day one in CHED, I made it known to Attorney Vitriolo that he had quite a reputation, no? Because he does have a reputation. As I said, allegedly he's supposed to be, a head of a group that uses influence with the schools and so forth. But at any rate, he did have a reputation. So I said to him, probably the first week in office, I said, Lito, if I believe only a fraction of what they have been saying against you, CHED is in trouble. So I guess part of that, talking to him like that, was to let him know that I was aware of this.
Yes.
I was not making any accusations at the time. I must admit that because of all of the warnings I had received about Attorney Vitriolo, I thought that the only way to achieve reform would be to have him out. That was my initial.
Okay.
That was my initial thinking, but I changed my mind.
Okay.
Because I said, no, it will just cause too much pain within and too much divisiveness. We won't get the work done. So I'll just manage him. I'll just make sure that we have checks and balances. I'm sure that we watch him, that he knows he's being watched, that we have the proper procedures. And so that's the way I chose to handle Attorney Vitriolo. And I guess that we worked together for 7 years or so, 6.5 years. But when the opportunity came, of course he would want me out, because I think I cramped his style.
So you think he helped these congressmen get access to particular information, or?
Well, obviously there were insiders who had to help them. Where would they get those documents, no? And I do know that, again, Attorney Vitriolo is extremely influential and can be very authoritative and cash in on all of the years that they have been together in CHED. No? He always likes to say that I have been in CHED 24 years since it started,
Yes.
and in government 36 years. So, he has a following, he has friends.
There was even a power struggle in CHED involving him and the position of executive
Yes,
director. I mean,
correct.
we remember that he was dismissed from the position
Correct, yes.
due to the irregularity in the 1996 agreement between the Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila and the National College of Physical Education. But the Court of Appeals had reinstated him, but at the time he
Yes.
didn't want to recognize him as executive director.
Just following the rules.
Yes, because at
Yeah.
the time, Mr. Carol Marquis was appointed by,
By President Duterte
himself. Do you think that particular issue at the time made it even
Oh,
worse?
yes, absolutely.
Yes.
I'm sure.
Did
And
you
it still
speak to
is.
Vitriolo at the time, ma'am?
Huh?
Did you speak to him?
Yes. I'm not sure whether we actually spoke about the Marquis and his presence, the actual executive director. I cannot pinpoint any specific time where we actually talked. Maybe I just was avoiding him because essentially I did send out clear memos that legally, and we had asked Malacanang as well, because this was controversial and not all of the commissioners agreed. So they said we will ask Malacanang, because if you will recall, then presidential spokesman or press secretary Abella
Yes.
had said Malacanang will comply with the orders of the court, with the court or something like that. And that was taken to mean that Vitriolo was back in.
Yes.
We said, no, but it's very clear. We've gotten legal opinions from the OSG, we've got legal opinions from CHED Legal, that it's not immediately executory because there is a period for the motion for reconsideration. If the complainant wants to file that, then we found out that the complainant indeed filed a motion for reconsideration. So it could not be executory.
Okay.
So I said, well, you could interpret the statement of Abella as saying, when it does become
Then they will
final,
Okay.
then we will follow it. No? And then finally, Malacanang did respond and say that yes, their legal research has shown that this is correct, no? That Marquis remains as the sitting executive director. And that has always been my stand, and I'm sure that was not popular with Lito.
By the time that you resigned, who was acting as executive director of CHED, in terms of who issues out the papers? Is it Yi or Vitriolo?
It is always Yi. Now, whether Vitriolo writes his own set of memos, does his own thing, that is Vitriolo acting. But as far as what is official, it is Carol Markey.
How was your relationship with the other CHED commissioners?
Well, not perhaps the best, in the sense that
Why?
I noticed that recently, and that's part of the reason also I thought, well, I might as well go, because I was always being outvoted, and that was very difficult. Because it's a collegial body, and so we can vote, and so if it's 4 against 1, that doesn't help me at all. And then I noticed that certain things which I would normally assume were the responsibilities of the head of office, which the chair still is. So the Commission on Bank is a collegial body, but basically handles policy. Running the office and the administrative stuff is supposed to still be the head of the office. That they were taking on more of these things. So it was a little strained, I must say. So.
Do you think that they somehow were relieved that you're out? Do you get that?
Perhaps
impression?
relieved. I will not say that they actually worked to. I
okay.
will not go as far as that. But I'm sure it's relieved. But in a sense, it's quite interesting. And I've told at least one of the commissioners who's more friendly with me, at least who is on talking terms with me, that, it's very interesting. I said, you're all united against me, but once I'm gone, I think, there will be the differences will start showing. And I'm sure that's what's happening now.
Sino pa itong commissioner na to, ma'am?
Well, Commissioner Lilian de las Llagas and I
Yes.
have worked together. I was chair of the UP board and she was secretary of the board. So we are friendly.
The president is yet to assign an officer
I
in
didn't
charge.
know that. So I
of
assumed
CHED.
that
Yes,
he had
and yet
assigned.
Commissioner De Vera, I heard, was the one who delivered a speech at the
Usually at the flag ceremony.
at the flag ceremony,
yeah.
which we understand in government offices, it's
The head
the
of
head
office.
of the office
yeah.
who does that. So, will he be? Do you think there's a good chance that he might be the one appointed after you?
I had assumed because who was it? I guess it was Secretary Roque who said yes, an OIC will be appointed. Who? And he said, I suppose it will be the most senior commissioner, and that is Commissioner De Vera.
Okay. Did any of the commissioners speak to you after your resignation?
Well, Commissioner De las Llagas.
Yes, but the rest
no,
didn't. Okay, no proper goodbyes, nothing.
No. Yeah, I was a little bit surprised, that they didn't even come in to say goodbye.
Okay. You worked for CHED for seven
and a half years.
Do you have any regrets as CHED chairperson?
Not in the sense that I regret all of these hardships and all that, no. Perhaps my regret is I feel there's so much more we could have done, and still to do. And I look around us and I see that all our neighbors have invested single-mindedly on higher education. And here we are. I have to say that higher education seems a bit like the playground of politicians and bureaucrats, and it's a little sad, because that's the future of the country. That's the future of our development and our competitiveness. It cannot be a political toy. So that's my regret, that we tried to bring about some changes, but I don't think enough.
Do you think you did enough to counter that involvement of politics in?
I tried,
Yes.
and I think that didn't endear me very much to some politicians, but it was necessary, absolutely necessary. And I am fortunate because since I have no political ambitions. I am a dense academic who is used to doing things in a certain way, has clear ideas of what is right and wrong, and I would never compromise quality. For me, that's very important. Otherwise, what's the point? We worked so hard, and I know the congressman really worked very hard to pass this universal access to tertiary higher education. But if it is access without quality, what's the point? You're shortchanging the young people of the Philippines.
We're down to our last couple of questions
Sure.
today. What legacy do you want to leave behind in CHED? How would you like to be remembered as CHED chairperson who served CHED for 2 terms?
2 terms, almost 2
Almost
terms.
2 terms.
Not quite. Well, I really would like to be remembered as someone who tried very hard and who really worked on quality of education. I really feel that that's non-negotiable, and so it meant closing up substandard programs. But I also would like to stress that I tried very hard to combine CHED's regulatory functions with its developmental. So we didn't just go around closing programs. We were also investing in building them up, giving them higher budgets, making sure they got support for faculty development and research. So that balance between regulatory and developmental. Also, I tried very hard to level the playing field between public and private education, because a lot of times the private groups would say, you are very strict with us. We have to comply with so many things. And yet, what? A congressman passes a law and immediately there is a college, there's a university, just like that. And they all claim that because they have a charter, CHED has no say in how it's run. So we tried very hard to, in fact, have a say, because CHED chairs all the state universities and colleges, and through that we also were able to, I think, work out some kind of modus vivendi. And because particularly we also were the ones who recommended the budgets of SUCS, the MOOE part of the budget, they had to work with us. And I like to think that they saw that this was mutually beneficial, that if they worked with CHED, they would get a lot more than if they were not working with CHED.
What program or programs in CHED were you most proud of that was implemented during your terms?
Well, we were very proud of the Student Grants in Aid program for poverty alleviation. It's an access program for truly the poorest of the poor. And we experimented with that with the Department of Social Welfare and Development using the 4P families. So we would choose college-age students from the 4P families, and they would be the very first in their families to get a college education. And they were given very generous scholarships that covered not just tuition, but all the living expenses as well, and to go to state universities and colleges. Now, that was really a challenge because, they always say that students in the state system are poor, but many of these SUCs hadn't seen poor until they saw these students who were really from remote areas and really very underprivileged backgrounds. And to make that transition, so that first year was really very challenging for us, because we had to negotiate with the universities to just modify their admissions policies and have remedial programs and bridging programs. And what was so wonderful in all this was that towards the end, they really caught up. Our first graduates, I'm getting goosebumps. We had our first graduates, I think, 3 years ago. We started the program 2012, so we had the first graduates in 16, 17, this is the third batch. You would have them, first of all, the survival rate was about 80%, which is very good. In other words, those who came in, who finally graduated. And of those, so many of them graduated with honors,
Wow.
no? Which shows that basically talent and intelligence is normally distributed, but opportunity is not. So if you single-mindedly, again, give opportunity to those who don't have it, then they prove that they can compete like everyone else. And so we're very proud of that. Essentially now, that program will be subsumed under the Universal Access law and the tertiary education subsidy, the TES, which is part of that law. We were very proud of that. Also, we worked very hard for what was called the Unifast law, where essentially this was rationalizing the many grants pala that are given out by the various agencies. No? So there are so many sources of public funds for scholarships. But each agency has its own rules. They go their own merry way, and there is no synchronization, no, of all of these various grants. And that's what Unifast meant to do, to rationalize the various public scholarships for students. And that will still be done, but Unifast will also play a role at the Unifast board in the implementation of the universal access to tertiary education. We also tried to work very hard on improving the quality of management of state universities and colleges, and we designed a program where current presidents as well as potential presidents would be trained. It was a program that we worked on with the Development Academy of the Philippines. So it was both a training program, but it was also a program for giving certain credentials to aspiring executives of higher education institutions, so that it also becomes less politicized. That if we have a system which says, in order to become a president of a state university or a college, you have to be a career education, PhilHex, higher education career executive. No? So it would be similar to the CESO system in civil service. So that was also worked on. It's not quite completed yet, in the sense that it's not formalized as the PhilHex system is not yet formalized, but we hope that it will be, that it will get some support. No? We worked within the normal programs of CHED as well, and strengthen them, like expanding the centers of excellence and centers of development. We worked on internationalization. We worked on academe-industry linkages, developing kind of careers of the future, no? By talking to industry and getting ideas from them as to what will be perhaps in demand in a few years. So we developed some courses so that to open up careers for Filipinos in new areas. So those are just some of the things. And then, well, I spent a lot of energy on ethical and ethical governance, good governance in CHED and state universities and colleges.
Now, you mentioned in your resignation speech that you will still be of service to higher education. So what's next for Patricia Licuanan? Where can we expect you? Where can we expect to see you again?
Well, I'm not sure, Vara, really, but truly, I do intend that I will remain active in higher education. I know the issues. I've invested quite a bit of myself in it, so I will obviously still be making pakialam, no, in that sense. But right now, I'm surprisingly feeling some sense of relief. I'm a little bit, relaxed, more relaxed, and I think I might enjoy a less hectic pace. So I haven't really thought about it yet. This came rather suddenly. I was planning. I said I'll spend the next 6 months really, sort of programming myself for retirement. So it's come a little bit suddenly, but I'm sure I'll be fine. Thank you.
And finally, last question for today. We know your replacement hasn't been announced by the president yet, but where do you think he or she should focus on after you? What programs should he or she build upon?
Well, actually, we do have a strategic plan, which is current, which is the Duterte administration vintage. So I think certainly they should just follow that. I would just say, get buckled down to work. Enough of this politics. Enough of the bickering, and get on with the job. And that's partly what I said really in my resignation speech. I had to go because I've seen that I was like a lightning rod, So now, hopefully, with me gone, there's less of that. But I'm not sure that will actually happen. Things are so political. So, but there are many good people. There are many good professionals in CHED. I just hope that they don't get intimidated. That there's a certain culture in government, I think, that we have to watch out for.
Okay.
So.
There you have it. That's all of my questions for today. Thank you so much for granting this interview, Dr. Licuanan.
Thank you too, Mara, for giving me the opportunity, and more power to Rappler.
Okay, and there you have it. That was Rappler Talk with Dr. Patricia Licuanan, who talked about her resignation as CHED chairperson. I am Mara Cepeda. Please join us again next time.